That's what I'm going to do when I roll into the office. I'm going to be like, I'm a world champion. I'm a fucking world champion. Silmar finally has a world champion. Coming to you pre-tape from the Best Go Show studios, this is the Best Go Show. I'm your host, Albert Aguilera. That's my producer, Curtis Stage. And Curtis, we need to figure out a way to convince our viewers to help us crowdfund $4 billion.
Billion.
Billion with a B.
Interesting. I do not have any friends that are going to contribute to well, maybe. I mean, you never know.
Every dollar counts. If everybody gives like $2, $3, eventually it'll add up.
What's this for?
Oh, we want to buy the UFC.
Oh, okay. Good plan.
Yes.
All right, Albert. Today's program is a UFC program. We're going to talk about UFC 198, have a recap on that. Brazil versus the world. Pretty much everybody in Brazil was at this event. Weidman's out of UFC 199, but we just found out there's a replacement, so we got to talk about that. How about McGregor versus Mayweather? Fans, do we want to see this happen? I do. Do we want to see that happen? And we're going to start the show with the UFC is possibly for sale. Let's get started.
All right, guys. So apparently there's been rumors flying around again that the UFC is up for sale, maybe in part, maybe in its entirety. But I was like, okay, report came out. A bunch of investing groups from China came, and apparently the high bid is in the $3.5 to $4 billion range. So I was like, okay, I got Chase Bank. I'm going to go down to Chase Bank, and I'm going to be like, hey, I need to open a line of credit. So they're like, okay, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to buy the UFC. And they're like, what? Like, I need $4 billion. I want to buy the UFC.
Were they good with that?
No, they laughed me out of the bank. They're like, sure, your credit's good, and we can open a line of credit, but not for $4 billion.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, but with your help, we can do a Kickstarter.
Ooh.
No, wait, what's the other one that doesn't you don't have to meet a goal?
Indiegogo, is that?
Whatever, it gives us less fees, because Kickstarter has like a 10% fee. So if we raise $4 billion, they're going to hit us for $400 million, and then we have to pay taxes on the remaining balance? I don't like taxes. Taxes suck.
All seems like a lot of money.
Yeah, anyways, so Dana White went on to the Dan Patrick Show, and he said, listen, if anyone's got $4 billion, we'd like to talk to you. But he's denying that...
If anyone has $4 billion.
He's denying that the UFC is up for sale either in part or in its entirety.
Yeah.
But reports have been coming out that... The investment groups that are coming out of China, because the UFC is trying to get a foothold into mainland China, and apparently it's really hard to do that, where if you don't have someone on the inside that is a Chinese company or a established Chinese businessman, you're not going to get into mainland China.
Well, it's weird.
That would be a huge market.
Yeah, well, China comes here and buys a lot of things.
Right.
So why wouldn't this would be just another thing they would buy? I mean, it makes sense.
That's true.
They bought up half of Los Angeles.
That they own the skyline in downtown.
Pretty much.
But this investment group, and it's one of 4 investment groups. Apparently, Fox has also put in a bid. Reportedly, has put in a bid. This is just speculation.
Yeah.
But the bid was not one of the top 4. Fox currently owns the licensing rights to distribute UFC content. It was a 7-year, $700 million deal. It expires in 2019. I mean, if I'm Fox, and this deal is expected to possibly triple in the next couple of years, because right now we're living in this bubble of sports contracts that are just ballooning and going crazy.
Yeah.
And ESPN is pushing really hard to talk all the UFC that they can. Listen, if I'm going to give you a 10-year deal at $300 million a year, that's $3 billion. I might as well just give you the 4 or 5 and own you outright.
Well, the thing about this is that UFC is quickly rising in the ranks of in the sports world in terms of what our eyeballs are on and what money we're putting into it. I mean, obviously nothing's going to knock the NFL off, and then you've got soccer worldwide, not in America as much, although it's
Zlatan. Do you hear about Zlatan might be coming to the Galaxy?
That could be great.
That would be awesome.
Be really good. So we've got NFL, of course, we got world soccer, but basketball, baseball, hockey's way down low, and UFC's rising. I mean, UFC's kind of getting up there and kind of pushing baseball a little bit. So, I think that $4 billion seems a little low to me, actually.
It does seem low in the sense of they could get a licensing agreement for a few $1 billion in the next 3 years. That's why it seems kind of low. But this could be a power play by the Fertittas to just leak out this number so that if people are in fact bidding, they can try to outbid each other. But it's always been known that Lorenzo and Frank are really, 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 really big football fans. I mean,
they want to get a team to
They
Vegas.
want to get a team in Las Vegas. They possibly might want to try and associate themselves with the Raiders, help the Raiders move to Vegas, possibly buy the Raiders or a portion of the Raiders.
Good idea.
So they're saying that, maybe they want to get out of the fight game. They sell off the UFC and possibly buy into an NFL franchise. This investment group might possibly purchase all of the UFC or just a portion. It's being reported that the portion might be 11 to 15%. Now, Frank and Lorenzo, they own 81% combined, 40.5 and 40.5. Dana owns 9%.
Yeah.
And then that digital group in Abu Dhabi, they own 10%. That's the shares that they own. And it's not a publicly traded company, so you and I cannot just go purchase stock. But, this could be a move that the Fertittas want to use to get into the NFL. Granted, they own casinos. They just bought the Palms Casino.
Yeah.
And they're trying to buy up properties in Las Vegas that are off the strip that are not owned by the MGM, by the Harris, by Caesars, so that they can own that landscape.
Yeah, I think the only way that you sell this property of UFC is if you are going to buy an NFL team or put in for an NFL team, because that's the only thing really bigger right now.
The Clippers sold for $2 billion.
Yeah, and that's the Clippers.
What do you think the Raiders would sell for?
At least that. For sure, at least that.
More
I'm
than
going to say
that.
$4 or $5 billion.
Yeah, because the NFL just prints money. Yeah. I would imagine that trying to purchase the Raiders would probably cost you $4 or $5 billion.
And the Raiders haven't even been good for a long time.
Nope.
But they are still one of the most visible teams in the NFL. All right, so that's something that we'll talk about more in future UFC. Probably there's going to be some more news coming out. Let's have a 198 recap and see what happened there.
Oh, well, UFC 198 recap. Well, Anderson Silva, the week of the fight, and this is completely my fault. I take all the blame in the world for this, but I was kind of like, hey, this is really awesome. It's fight week, and this card stayed intact. And about an hour later, my friend tells me, dude, Anderson's out. I go, what do you mean he's out? He's like, he had emergency gallbladder surgery. What? What's a gallbladder? And apparently the gallbladder is an additional stomach that humans have, but don't use.
Yeah, we need it, I think.
Do we?
Yeah, I think we
What
do.
does it do?
I'm not sure, but we need
But
that.
is it like your tonsils where you have it, but you just don't know why?
I think it falls into that category.
Anyways,
I think
Anderson...
it's a filtration system. It's kind of,
That's what I'm guessing. But Anderson had gallbladder surgery, so his fight with Uriah Hall got scratched. But lucky for him, he says, hey, listen, it's not very invasive, the surgery, I guess. So he'll be out only 6 weeks, and he's ready to rock. He says he'd be willing to go on to UFC 200. Meanwhile, Uriah Hall got pulled from the card entirely, and they might reschedule him at UFC 200, or they just might give him somebody else. Moving on. So, like Curtis said, it was Brazil versus the world, and it was basically a night of Brazilian legends versus various people. Little Nog fought, Damian Maia fought, Shogun fought, and here's my thing. I don't condone violence. I'm not big on violence, and people go, but you're a big MMA fan. You watch UFC, blah, blah. I watch it for the competition. I like watching two guys compete, and if something violent happens, I understand. It's a fight. But what gets me is when I'm seeing Little Nog, Big Nog, Big Nog, by the way, is getting inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame during International Fight Week at UFC 200. That was announced during the pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. But what gets me is I don't like seeing these guys like Shogun, like the Naguras, BJ Penn coming back. It's like you're punch drunk. You're just going to go in there and get mauled. Just stop.
Yeah.
And I don't like watching, I used to love watching them fight. These guys battle. But now going into these fights, I'm like, oh man, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But in this case, Little Nog got the win over Patrick Cummings.
He did.
I was not expecting a TKO win. I mean, I thought maybe, okay, if he can go 3 rounds, some home cooking will get him with the crowd and he might win a decision. I did not expect him to beat Patrick Cummings. I did not expect him to get the TKO. And then you got Shogun fighting Beaston, 25-8. And he won that too via split decision. And Beaston wasn't Beaston. This guy would go in there and he decided, I'm going to stand up and exchange with Shogun, which isn't the best idea. Because even though Shogun doesn't have the same build that he used to, can still knock you out.
Exactly.
And instead of wrestling,
he landed a lot more punches.
Yeah, Beaston landed 85 to 45. He totally outlanded him. And Shogun was getting hit, but he wasn't getting rocked. And at the end of the first, end of the second, Shogun rocked Beaston. He dropped him twice. Now, assuming that bell doesn't ring, Shogun might have won the first or the second round to finish the fight, actually finish Beaston. But Anderson survived, and
but Shogun won kind of the split decision because he's at home, right?
Yeah,
would the crowd have rioted if he doesn't win?
I don't want to say that they would have rioted, but Brazilian fans are kind of
there was a little
they're dangerous.
Yeah, they're dangerous.
But in my opinion, Shogun did not win that fight.
Yeah.
He lost all 3 rounds, in my opinion, but him knocking Anderson down at the end of the first, end of the second, almost finishing it, Anderson got saved by the bell, but Shogun winning the last 25 seconds of the first and second round, that's what won him that split decision.
Exactly. But a little home cooking there.
A little home cooking there. Yeah. And then you got the bizarre story of the Damian Maia and Brown fight.
Yeah.
So this is the fight. This was the headlining fight for FS1. This was the fight I was looking most to this fight.
Yes.
Because Brown, I love watching him fight because he's the Carlos Condit type where he can take a beating, but he's going to give it right back to you.
He was not making any friends starting at the weigh-in, though.
No, he was not. Now, guys, if you're not familiar with Brazilian fans, during the weigh-ins, if you are not a Brazilian and you're fighting in Brazil, chances are you're fighting a Brazilian. At the weigh-ins, the crowd starts chanting, "You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die."
That's something you don't probably want to hear.
Right. So Brown didn't like that, and he gave them the double middle finger salute.
Yeah.
And, they booed him, obviously. And fight night comes, and he's making his way to the octagon, and he gets smacked by a fan, and he starts jogging to the octagon, gets smacked again. Third fan grabs him and hits him. Brown turns around and just punches the fan and then makes his way to the octagon.
That was kind of awesome.
He's already fighting to get to a fight. And the fight wasn't very competitive. I mean, Damian Maia, this guy moved down to welterweight, and he just shows you that having the fundamental Brazilian jiu-jitsu that he has, he's mauling guys. And he's not destroying people where he's just like elbowing them into concussions. He rode Brown like a backpack, and he was in total ground control the entire time. He almost had the rear naked choke a few times in the first 2 rounds. Eventually, he gets it in the third, submits Brown, and it was he had no answer for the ground game.
It was a bad day for Brown, and then it got worse.
It got worse because the next day at the Fighters Hotel, Brown's just chilling in the lobby, minding his own business, and whack!
Was he?
He was. Okay. He wasn't doing shit, and he gets sucker punched by some guy, and then the guy ends up running out of the hotel. His friend, Brown's friend, ends up running after him, and eventually catches him outside, tackles him, and they get into a scuffle, and the police show up, and they turns out that the guy that sucker punches Brown is his ex-coach.
Yeah, that's good.
What?
Why would that happen?
Horrible weekend. Brown had a horrible weekend.
So Maia is 8-2 in his last
10 at welterweight. He's 8-2, and the problem.
And he has 5 wins in a row.
He does. He's got 5 wins in a row now. Robbie Lawler just got booked with Tyrone Woodley, so that title shot is set up. You got Wonder Boy that's going up against Rory McDonald, and it's Rory McDonald's last fight on contract. So you're guessing that the winner of the Rory fight and Wonder Boy fight is going to end up getting the Tyrone Woodley Robbie Lawler guy. So Damian Maia is just kind of chilling, but Damian Maia goes, "Listen, I've been dominating my opponents."
Yeah.
But
does he have to wait till 200 though for this, or does
no? The 201 is going to be Tyrone Woodley.
Okay,
so
it's going to be past
he's
that.
saying that. Listen, I know what I'm doing, and my eye is on the prize, but I'm not going to trash talk my opponent into getting a title shot.
Okay.
The guy's a very respectful fighter.
So he's going to wait.
So I guess he's just going to wait his turn, and I don't know. Maybe they'll give him the loser of one of those 2 fights, and then if he wins that, give him a title shot.
Yeah.
I mean,
that makes sense.
Here's the thing with Robbie Lawler: when Robbie Lawler fights, he goes to war.
Yeah.
So someone in the Woodley-Lawler fight is going to get hurt. And chances are that the winner of that fight is probably going to be out for a couple of months after. So maybe this fight is UFC 201, so it's going to be in August. So assuming there's no major damage to the winner, the belt could be up for grabs again in November, December.
Yeah. So let's talk about Cyborg.
The debut of Cyborg.
Exciting. People
Very
are excited
exciting.
about this.
All right, guys. So Chris Cyborg made her UFC debut, UFC 198. I wanted to say Leslie Mann for whatever reason. Every time I was talking about Leslie Smith, Leslie Mann's name kept popping into my head.
That'd be a good fight too.
That would be a good fight. Leslie Mann's pretty hot.
Yeah.
But anyway, she fought Leslie Smith. Leslie Smith's a bantamweight in the UFC women's division, and she apparently was the only one that decided, hey, I'll move up to 140 and take the fight. The 140 was a catchweight. That division does not exist in the UFC.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know that Cyborg is the Invicta champ at 145 at featherweight. Her contract is a little weird with the UFC because the UFC doesn't have a 45 division, but they pay her bills and loan her to Invicta the way like a soccer club would loan somebody out.
Yeah.
But Cyborg came
And
in.
she's still going to defend that belt.
She's going to defend the belt. That's what she said after the fight. Cyborg came in and she did what everyone thought she was going to do. Just destroy Leslie Smith. Yeah. And Leslie Smith was fucking pissed. Okay, so
she didn't think the fight should have been stopped.
I don't either. Okay, I thought that the stoppage. I 100% agree with her. I thought the stoppage was too soon, but at the same time, you look at the position she was in, and Cyborg was in full on cyborg mode.
Yeah,
and Cyborg, when she mounts you or is on top or is in the pummeling position, that's kind of like Terminator. You remember Terminator 1 where Sarah Connor's like going through the factory and the Terminator, even though the Terminator is like getting crushed by the like mechanical thing, it's not still stopping. Like not stopping and going. That's how Cyborg is. So the ref stopped the fight.
Let's just stop for a second. I don't want Cyborg to mount me. That sounds good, but I don't want that.
She would destroy you.
She would kill me.
She would kill you.
We're about the same weight. I'm a little heavier than her.
Are you? She fights at 145.
No, I'm a little heavier, but she'd kill me. I do not want her to mount me though.
Okay. So anyway, she comes out, full on destroys Leslie Smith. Leslie Smith was pissed. You know, I don't agree with the stoppage, but in any case, she was going to get mauled. And after the fight, she says, "Hey, listen, I'm the 145 champ. I'm going to defend it. If any of you ladies in the UFC want to do some catchweight fights, I'm all for it." Everyone was like, "Oh, where's your PR person?" At that very moment is when you should have called out Ronda Rousey or Miesha Tate or Holly Holm. Yeah. That's when you should have done that, but she didn't. She's very respectful. She's friends with Holm and Miesha Tate. All three of them shot a movie. I think it's called Fightland, and they all met each other and on that set.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're all kind of friendly with each other. And afterwards, Miesha Tate congratulated her. And because Cyborg weighed in at 139 pounds, she goes, "Hey, cut 4 more pounds and we can do a championship fight at 135. Congratulations on your victory." And then she's like, "Hey, you know, thank you. You know, I'm the champ at 145. If anybody want to do catchweight fights." So the ladies were being very respectful. I don't believe Holly Holm responded to anybody or they even mentioned Holly Holm's name in any of the conversations. But then online bettors came out and were like, "Oh, fantasy fight, in the event that Cyborg fights Miesha Tate, Cyborg would be a minus 225, I think it was, favorite. In the event that Cyborg fights Ronda would be favored. So they had Cyborg at plus 200. And I'm thinking, the size difference between Cyborg and Ronda is massive.
Yes.
And what did we learn about Ronda Rousey when she fought Miesha Tate and when she fought Holly Holm? She can't box, and she doesn't like getting hit in the face.
No.
Cyborg likes to box and punching people in the face.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well Ronda Rousey would do with someone that's significantly larger than her, because Holly Holm was larger than her and she couldn't judo toss Holly Holm.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think Rousey, that would be a tough one. I think Cyborg would win that, but that fight has to happen, I think. At some point, I think that has to happen.
Well, that fight is like the Mayweather-Pacquiao of women's MMA.
I think people want that fight, but it might not go well for Rousey.
Nope.
So,
but maybe we'll see that. Maybe we're lucky. We might see that fight in Madison Square Garden in November, UFC 205.
Yeah, maybe McGregor and Cyborg, Rousey.
that card would kill if you had Cyborg and Rousey and McGregor and John Jones and when Chris Weidman, who we'll talk about in a minute, comes back. So that's a good one. Now, Jacare and Vitor Belfort.
Yeah.
Okay. Why the UFC fed the old lion to the alligator? I don't know.
Yeah.
This was a mismatch fight. I mean, Jacare got that upset loss to Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero gets popped for failing a drug test afterwards, so he's on the sidelines. And Jacare just mauled Vitor Belfort. Vitor looked old, and Vitor's another one where I'm always on the fence with him. Like, it's been really hard for me to always get behind Vitor Belfort. I've never really been a fan of his, but he's a legend. He's been in the sport forever.
Yeah.
And it's like seconds into the first round, he goes to the ground. He takes an elbow over the bridge of the nose. He starts bleeding. Hey, let's stop the fight. Check on him, doctor. Okay, he's good. Cover it up so that there's no blood in his eyes. Get back into the ground position. They finally stood up, and I was like, okay, for a good 4, maybe 5 seconds, Vitor was holding his own and was engaging. And for whatever reason, he decided, I'm going to latch onto Jacare and pull guard and go down to the ground. And Jacare was like, okay, thank you, and just started hammering down on him, and 20 seconds later, this fight was over.
Yeah.
So now Jacare is like, hey, I want a rematch with Luke Rockhold. And,
really?
Well, because, when he was the Strikeforce champion, he and Luke Rockhold fought 2010, 2011. Luke Rockhold beat him in what some people say was controversial, blah, blah, blah. But he's been wanting that shot. I've been wanting to see him fight Luke Rockhold again. So we'll see what happens, especially now that Chris Weidman is out.
Okay, let's talk about Stipe versus Verdum.
All right, guys. So the heavyweight championship of the world. Stipe Miocic came in, and I don't want to say he shocked the world because he didn't. The betting odds were Verdum favored minus 135. Stipe was plus 135. So this was a pick'em. And a lot of people were like, Verdum, greatest heavyweight champion of all time.
Yeah.
He beat Kane. He beat Fedor. Like, this guy's list is really great for his accomplishments. And you look at Verdum. Verdum's not the most athletic guy. His stand-up has gotten significantly better. I thought that's why he stood a chance against Stipe, because Stipe's a boxer and a wrestler. So on the ground, Verdum was going to have the advantage, but on the feet, I thought Stipe was going to have it. And these guys, the first minute, nothing much happened. They were kind of just gauging range, feeling each other out. Eventually, Verdum landed something. It kind of rocked Stipe. Stipe backed up against the fence, started rolling, and Verdum started chasing. He started throwing wildly. Miocic just kind of threw that a little short, like, right, and Verdum and his troll face went down.
Yeah.
And he shut up 45,000 people. That place was like,
quiet.
What?
Yeah.
And then, he runs out over the fence. He starts yelling, I'm a fucking world champ. I'm a fucking world champ. Cleveland, we have a championship.
Cleveland wins one.
Yes. Oh, hey, that reminds me. Yesterday, I was eating, and I came across a food truck, and this food truck was from Cleveland, and they were selling Cuban sandwiches, and I thought it was kind of weird. So I walked up to them, and I met these very nice ladies, and I was like, so explain. I go, where's the Stipe sandwich?
Do they know what you were talking about?
They had an idea of what I was talking about, but they didn't really know him because they don't follow mixed martial arts. But I told them the story about Stipe and how Stipe is he's a full-time firefighter.
Yeah.
This guy is a full-time firefighter that then...
If your house is burning down, you want this dude to come in.
He would roll in like in his full outfit while wearing the UFC championship belt. But I was talking to these ladies, and they own a truck called Ralph and Richie's, and Ralph and Richie's is really good.
Are they going to be a new sponsor for our show?
I don't know. I should ask them. But Ralph and Richie's is really good. So if you guys are in LA, they're new to Los Angeles. They're from Cleveland. They sell great sandwiches. You guys should check them out. And I was like, okay, why are Cuban sandwiches from Cleveland? They're like, well, we make them a little different than they do in Florida. And I was like, how's that? Like, we stack them. And no shit, these things were like that high.
Okay.
You know me. I eat a ton.
You do.
I could barely get through that sandwich.
Whoa.
I was like,
yeah.
It was really good. Yeah. It was a lot of food. But Ralph and Richie's, if you guys are in Los Angeles, follow them on Twitter, check them out. And they were really excited for Stipe, so I'm suggesting that they make a Stipe sandwich because Stipe was right. He is the first championship in Cleveland. He's the first world champ that Cleveland has had since like the 1926 somethings. Yeah. I don't know. They haven't won in forever.
Cleveland, the Indians won like in the 50s. Didn't they win something in
I don't know.
54 or
They're
something
competing
like
with the Cubs for droughts. But, the Cavaliers have a shot of winning this year.
Cavs have a shot.
But, yeah, good for Stipe. Now I'm hoping Stipe fights Overeem.
Yes.
Stipe versus Overeem is going to be a really good fight if it happens, and we'll see when it happens. Stipe's he's a guy that doesn't there's no long layoffs with him, right? Like with Kane being as awesome as he is, every time he would fight, I tore my labrum. I messed up my knee. So that's why I think Kane's never met his full potential yet. Yeah. But here's the thing. Is winning the UFC heavyweight championship a good thing for your career? Because you are the champion, but no UFC champ has ever defended the title consecutively twice.
Exactly.
Okay? So it's kind of like, okay, Stipe's been beating everybody, Kane was beating everybody, Verdum was beating everybody, suddenly you become champion, you're like, oh, I can't get 2 wins in a row. Yeah. Crap. And
well, he's a firefighter.
And that's the thing with the UFC heavyweight division. I believe it's always been weak and it's always been shallow. And at 265 pounds, I don't care how good your jiu-jitsu is or your wrestling or your takedown defense or your boxing or your anything. You cannot train your brain to take blows.
Got it.
So anybody can knock you out at any given point,
Exactly. Hey, let's talk about 199 because we just had quick news this morning.
Yes, guys, breaking news, but it's not going to be breaking by the time you hear this because we're shooting this Wednesday morning. You'll see this Wednesday night. Anyways, so Chris Weidman went out. Chris Weidman apparently has a bulging disc in his C6, C7 neck vertebrae, which is not good. So he's trying to avoid surgery, but he will be out a minimum of 6 to 12 weeks. He's trying to get back on the UFC 205 card, Madison Square Garden. In the meantime, Dana White said it. Michael the Count Bisping is going to be getting his first ever title shot. And I applaud Michael Bisping because I like Michael Bisping. He's a nice guy. I've met him before. Fantastic guy. I think he deserves his title shot. He's been in the UFC for 10 years, and he's always been on the cusp of getting a title shot, but he always runs into some son of a bitch that was a TRT or PED user. Now, at the time, TRT was okay. PEDs have never been okay. Yeah. So I tip my hat to Michael Bisping and people like Tim Kennedy who have always been clean in this game. Yeah. And he and Luke Rockhold fought 2 years ago. Luke won via stoppage in the second round. But, good for Bisping. This is his first ever UFC title shot, and I wish him the best. I hope he does well. And Bisping, if you're watching this, congratulations, bro. Take home a gold belt to the UK.
Okay, so let's finish up with possibly McGregor versus Mayweather. This
isn't a one-way street. McGregor has talked about it. Mayweather has openly talked about it. And then you got Bob Arum, who's not either one of their promoters, calling this a travesty and a joke and something that should never happen. It's like, you shut up, old man. You just don't want this to happen because you're not going to make a goddamn penny.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The UFC allows its fighters. I mean, Stipe is the heavyweight champ, and he's fighting fighters.
Yeah.
Okay. But the UFC allows its fighters to fight in other promotions that are not competing promotions or sports that are striking. So you see that a lot of UFC fighters will participate in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, in grappling tournaments, wrestling tournaments, stuff where you're not going to get punched in the face. This is different. It's boxing. You're getting punched in the face. Now, Mayweather says, I want $100 million, and I think I can get it. And that's just to show up. That does not include pay-per-view.
Exactly.
So
he'll get that. But the thing is he just runs around the ring a lot, and McGregor, I don't know if he'll be able to...
shows up to engage.
And he can't grab him and just...
Right, he cannot do that. But here's the thing, that honestly, I think if McGregor lands on Floyd Mayweather, McGregor would destroy Floyd Mayweather. Now, here's the thing, though. Can he land? Maybe, maybe not. But the difference between MMA and boxing is that when I weigh in to an MMA fight, Conor McGregor weighs into a featherweight fight, which is what this fight would be at, because that's where Floyd Mayweather fights at 145, 146, whatever his division of boxing is. You show up, you weigh in, you're 145, championship weight, you pound some Pedialyte, and you rehydrate yourself.
Yeah.
In boxing, you don't do that. In boxing, it's a two-way thing where your contract says, hey, you have to show up at the whatever weight, in this case 145, 146, but on fight night, you have to re-weigh in so that you don't rehydrate at more than a certain amount. Now, McGregor usually rehydrates back to 165 pounds, 160 pounds. Mayweather's camp will not let him do that.
Oh, okay.
And then it's going to be, how do you co-promote this? Is Showtime and Floyd Mayweather's people, are they just going to say, hey, Dana White, UFC, we feel that your fight is worth X amount, loan him for one fight, here's a flat bill check of a few $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever it is? Or is the UFC going to co-promote?
Yeah. Well, it'll be exciting. I think people will be jacked up about this possibility, and we'll see where it goes. Okay, Albert, so what is our gift of the day?
All right, guys, our gift of the day, we're going from the octagon to the diamond, and a fight broke out because Bautista decided to slide in a little bit too hard, a little bit too high, and the Ranger second baseman, Odor, did not like that, so he decided to drop a bomb with his right hand.
That was a good punch.
That was a really good punch, and now I'm thinking that Odor should be a full-time baseball player, part-time UFC fighter, much like Stipe. It's worked out for Stipe.
It has.
It has. All right, guys, but that's been our show. Don't forget to stalk us on Twitter at Best Coast Show. Don't forget to find us on iTunes now and Stitcher, SoundCloud. Do us a favor, if you can write reviews and rate us on the iTunes, that would be fantastic. But yeah, feel free to stalk us on Twitter at Best Coast Show. That's been our show, and you guys have a good night.